All right, everyone. Well, in this session, we're going to be expanding upon some of the information that Simon had shared earlier to give some real life practical examples to what businesses, successful businesses from members, including members of our Green Economy North program are doing right now and how they've benefited from the transition. Now, these things apply to all businesses since it is a benefit, how we're dealing and growing the green economy or the low carbon economy. Now I'm going to be introducing all of our wonderful panelists briefly. All of our panelists were provided some questions in advance. We're going to go around discussing the questions. Each panelist will have 3 to 4 minutes to discuss. And I also invite you to put your own questions in chat just in case we have some time at the end. Unfortunately, Paul Rack, owner of Veriform, unfortunately was unable to arrive today, but we do have some great panelists today. So we will go through them. Firstly, of course, we have Kati McCartney. Now, Kati is the president of Froskr. Kati, am I saying this right? Froskr?
Yeah, you totally nailed it. You got it.
Yes. Honestly, I wish there was gold stars in the adult world.
Virtual high five.
Yes. Now, it's an environmental consulting and technology firm providing business stability through environmental sustainability for clients in mining, heavy manufacturing, construction, and municipal projects, something that pretty much screams Northern Ontario. Yeah. Kati is an experienced leader and holds an honors bachelor in science and chemistry from Wilfrid Laurier University, master's in chemical sciences, and a master's of business administration from Laurentian University. Everyone's so wonderfully educated. She has over 15 years experience with the environmental field and is a registered environmental professional in Canada. That's a wonderful certification to have. She is also registered as a leadership in energy and environmental design, lead certified, green associate, as well as among the first 100 people globally to achieve the International Society of Sustainability Professionals Sustainability Associate designation. That is amazing. And to have someone like that here in Northern Ontario is absolutely a value for us here in the province. Highly engaged in her community, Kati is the past chair of the Cameron College Board of Governors, a director with the Greater Sudbury Hydro Incorporated Board of Directors, and a member of Science North Business Affairs Committee. Kati, what a pleasure to have you here today. Give another wave so everyone knows who you are.
Hey, thanks. Thank you.
There you go. Perfect. Paul unfortunately couldn't be with us today, so we will be going on to Barb. Oh, Kati, I apologize. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your profile?
No, thank you. I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm super proud to have this kind of a forum in our community. So kudos to you guys for putting together today.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your skills with us. We really greatly appreciate that. Now going to Barb Erskine. Barb is a shareholder and acting general manager for Spltrail Brewing Company and a Green Economy North member. So if you've been on the island and enjoyed some Spltrail brew, you can thank Barb. She has a PhD in psychology and has practiced as a clinical psychologist for over 30 years. No wonder she's asking me those deep questions. The majority of those years on Manitoulin Island. From 2014 to 2018, Barb served as a municipal councillor in Billings Township, Kagawong, and has been involved as a community volunteer over the past decade. Love volunteering. In 2018, Barb and her partner decided to act on their love of craft beer and invested in Spltrail Brewing Co. in North Gore Bay, a gorgeous spot right over the marina. I highly recommend you spend some time there. By 2020, Barb became an acting general manager. That's the best investment ever. And Spltrail and has already aligned itself with the environmental, social, and governance values of sustainability, committing itself to policies and actions in a step-by-step process. Barb, thanks for joining us today. Anything else you want to add about Spltrail or yourself today?
No, David, thank you. You're too kind. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's try to get that discount next time I purchase.
It's working.
And speaking of getting in good graces with the right people, Judy Sumner is a member of Trinity United Church in Capreol, and she's our next person on our panel today, and feels proud to belong to a congregation and denomination which takes seriously the responsibility to look after Mother Earth. Judy is a retired chemistry teacher and has spent many wonderful hours walking in the bush with her dog and friends. And beautiful Capreol, there's no shortage of that beautiful scenery. Judy feels that she's very fortunate to live in this beautiful place and takes seriously her personal responsibility to look after it. Now, Trinity United Church has worked with Rethink Green for many years. It has made many green improvements, including the insulated roof, rebuilding some windows, caulking, replacing light bulbs, and turning down the heat. Judy widely advocates for the difference it has made in their energy use and for how very useful it is to keeping records of that transition. What an important point. You can't reduce, you can't measure. So record keeping is important. Judy, we know your camera isn't on, but why don't you say hello? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Hi, David. I'm sorry about the camera, but I don't want to mess up the voice, so we'll just leave it like that.
All right.
I'm not a good computer person, but that's okay.
Well, as long as you're a good environmentalist and sustainability expert, we'll meet you halfway in the middle.
Well, thank you.
All right. So we're going to go to a round of some of these questions, and I'd like to go to this question first. So these are some of the, I've gone too far. I just got excited about the next one of the questions. So I'm going to send this to Kati first. So we're going to go around the table having this discussion. Question one to Kati: as we realign ourselves for post-COVID-19 economy, what would you say are the characteristics of a green economy leader now?
I struggled, you gave us the questions in advance, and I struggled with this one a little because in our community, I've held roles, working for mining in the environment group, working for post-secondary as a sustainability manager, now running an environmental consulting firm. And I don't know that you need to be a green economy leader to have changed your habits post-COVID. So what I'm really motivated by and inspired by is the obvious changes that we've had to make. You don't have to drive to work as much anymore. So now leaders for organizations that's an obvious one, right? Considering hybrid workspaces, what that means. But I don't think people really extrapolate that yet. And so, wasteless lunches. Well, you were making lunch at home while we were quarantined. We didn't print, the dependency you might have had on printing depending on what your office or your nature of your job looked like before, you might have printed just by habit, and then you didn't want to at home because you had to buy your own ink or whatever. So I can tell you our workforce changed drastically, the amount of impact we might have had from a carbon footprint. And the translation of that, I think, is the responsibility. So the translation of a green economy leader now is, what are those things we learned that you need to force people to not get back into those bad habits? So how can we be hybrid? How do we encourage, the same wasteless lunches and planning and less printing? And do you need to do site visits? Do you need to travel as much? How do we reduce on shipping and packaging? And I would also say one real important change our green economy leaders need to consider, and our clients are local procurement. So considering how to change your buying practices. We're partnering with Indigenous firms. Can we look at local businesses versus, just Amazon by default, right? What are those things that we can be considering? And then just walking the walk. So I think it taught us a lot post-COVID that was already there, and the challenge that we need to have as green economy leaders is just not to fall back into those habits and help people maintain what we've done through the pandemic.
That's such an interesting point, because I've heard two sides of that argument, and I'm on board with you. You always hear this return back to normal, let's get back to normal. And then the other side of the argument is, well, the normal is what got us here in the first place. So now is our chance to change. And I really love that answer, that perspective. How we've learned that this dynamic workspace, this unique way of operating is working and has worked. I think the interesting stat that I heard was that we as a society have advanced 10 years online in the span of a year in our comfort levels. And I think today is proof of that.
Yeah, totally. How would, we wouldn't have never imagined this. You might not have even held it, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, if you couldn't imagine running this day virtually. So I think the challenge as leaders is to translate that, keep it going, whatever we have, and don't fall back into old habits.
Exactly. Don't fall back. I love that. Except for time changes, which, that's a different one. All right. Barb, how about yourself? What do you think about this as we align ourselves for the post-COVID world economy? What are characteristics of a green economy leader? How do you take that?
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more with what Kati has to say, that's for sure. And keeping the motivation going, I think, with COP26 and so many things, given climate change and environmental issues such a high profile right now, I think it's a great time to keep the message alive, for our employees, for our partners, and just sort of keeping the talk going for sure. As far as action is concerned, I think we're we're a brewery, but we're a very, very small company, and we only have, a handful of full-time employees and some casual people. So we don't have, say, engineers on staff or anybody like that who could do those kinds of evaluations. So for us, working through this period of time and looking into the future where we can spread our wings a little bit after the COVID paranoia or whatever, we're really looking at partnerships, and our partnership with Green Economy North is very important to us because that allows us to have access to a certain amount of expertise. Meeting people, other people in this forum may allow us access to other expertise that will help us be more green, be more less wasteful, and keep the momentum going. And other partnerships are local procurement. And I would agree with Kati on that, because we really have put in a great effort into doing that since COVID arrived. And the insularity of COVID, that might be turning that insularity into a plus, is really sort of seeking out, well, what's nearby, as opposed to, what is far off and cheaper or whatever. So, and local is really become an attraction in and of itself. So as a business and as a brewery, that's really a destination brewery. So we attract a lot of tourists. If we support local and we walk the talk and we can show people what we're doing, it also is very, very good for our business because people are really buying into that concept. So, it's good for business, it's good for the environment, and I kind of like that combination when we can get it done.
I love that. And I always love a name drop. So thanks, Barb. Appreciate that.
That'd be a lot of that.
Heading things over to Judy. Judy, what do you think about this? Now, obviously, from any perspective, from a congregation and managing a church, you see a lot of different things than some other traditional businesses might see. So what do you think about the characteristics of a green economy leader in post-COVID?
Well, I think green leaders should be knowledgeable and or have connections with knowledgeable people. Myself, I have knowledge of thermodynamics, so I can explain energy things, and this sometimes goes over people's heads. And it's really our connection with the folks at Rethink Green, folks who are actually doing practical green stuff, their encouragement and resources, which has made the difference in my congregation. Leaders should have good communication skills and lead by example, working alongside those who are willing to do the legwork and help. Leaders should be persistent, and you need to be willing to start with small, inexpensive things, because it's all about the money, especially in a church where the money is difficult to get, and then you build bigger. For example, at my church, we initially put plastic inside our big high windows, inexpensive. When folks saw the plastic ballooning in, evidence of winter wind blowing through the window, they agreed to pay for a major window rebuild. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. Now, after many years of encouraging and measuring our energy use, they have agreed to a 10 kilowatt solar panel project on our church roof, and I am just thrilled.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I can hardly wait to see the meter run backwards.
That is incredible. And I'll tell you, I've been at this for a couple of years now in the environmental sector, and you're the first person to ever bring up thermodynamics. So thank you for hitting me with something new. It's wonderful. Okay, well, moving on, I think we're going to go on to the next question. Now, what sustainability measures have you taken with your own business? Judy, you sort of touched on this. I'm going to toss it back over to Kati here. Your own business, organization, or home, based on your experience, what advice would you offer other business organizations who are starting on this path? And Kati, Judy covered a little bit about this, about starting small, but what's your take on this, especially coming from this is your bread and butter, right? This sort of advice.
Yeah, I think the earlier part of this question is a little bit easier to answer and probably better served by Judy and Barb and their expertise. My experience has been, previous to this, I was with Laurentian University and I was the first manager of sustainability. So it's like a small town, there's multiple buildings, waste diversion, public transportation. There's so many, food security, so many items to tackle with that one word, sustainability. And I would say what we always tried to do is maybe not reverse the clock, but plan forward. And the United Nations has the definition of, leaving future generations in a better position than we're in today. So, paraphrasing, I'm not articulating it properly, but the sentiment is there to plan better and do better now, so that, generations in the future. And in a lot of Indigenous teachings, we learn that also, right? 7 generations thought process impacting in the future. And so, that experience at Laurentian, my experience with the mining companies, and now working with our clients on an aligned vision for just being more sustainable and acting more sustainable, just because of future generations. Now being a mom, I mean, that totally changes your mindset too, in the future. But I would say on all of this experience, there are two things that have served me well through my career. And one is finding champions. So you don't need to be the only one advocating and screaming and trying to make the change and write the policy. There are champions everywhere that are ready to mobilize. They just might need another person or a partner or have aligned vision. So finding champions. And then the second piece of advice I would have is to not boil the ocean, right? And I don't mean that pun. I realize I'm saying that now. Maybe another analogy is don't drink through a fire hose or something like that. But it's overwhelming. It's really overwhelming when you're passionate. For instance, at Laurentian, we want to change all the outdoor lighting, indoor lighting, all the HVAC, go to cogen, waste diversion, get composting on campus, think about changing behavior with automated lights on and off, getting local food in. Like there's so, you can, divestment with, policy, there's so many areas that you just have to start. And so the other piece of advice I have is 1, find the champion, and 2, just get going, just start, just find something. There's a lot of analogies, find the low-lying fruit. What's the biggest bang for your buck? And I don't think that's relevant anymore. I would just say start with Rethink Green Economy North, find someone to Judy's great point, find the champion or the knowledgeable partner, and just start. And then it'll balloon or avalanche from there.
I mean, that's such a great point, Kati, about the overwhelming nature of it. And like we hear that all the time, I want to make a difference, but there's too much to do. I want to start, but everyone else isn't doing it. What's my bit going to do? And it becomes overwhelming, but that just start is such good advice, I think.
Right. And you can analysis paralysis, to Judy's point, with the window, you could step back and say, do I look at the lighting first? Do I look at the heating? Do I look at the window? Like there are so many areas, and you say, what's the biggest bang? And I think when you have a champion, to her great point, just start there. It's already an impact, and it'll already be a better carbon footprint than it was last year. So that's already a great story to mobilize on.
Love that. Also, if I take anything from all day, don't boil the ocean. Kati McCartney.
Oh gosh, I don't think that's a good idea.
Technically, it's not bad advice.
No, you're right. Well, yeah, I guess in many different ways.
Heading over to you there, Barb. Don't worry about having to drop a tagline like "Don't boil the ocean," but you see this from the other spectrum. So Kati's talked about these larger businesses. You talked about being a destination brewery, bringing the tourism. So every little bit probably counts for you when it comes to bottom line in relation to sustainability. What advice do you have to offer?
Yeah, that's so true, David. So again, we start small, and one of the things that we do that people seem to really enjoy hearing about really is that we have a lot of spent grain, of course, in the brewing process. So there isn't any of it that goes into the landfill. It all goes to local farmers. And we actually have a bakery down the street that's used some of it in bread. So it goes to local farmers and becomes part of their feed for their livestock or their kids or whatever. So, being able to reuse it is really a point of pride for us. And we were profiled in a brewing industry magazine, and they chose that as their cover picture, us at the farm, with the grain and the cows and stuff. So anyways, that's something we're really proud of, but it's just a natural thing to do. It's the other thing though, again, dropping Green Economy North and Rethink Green, was that we did acquire a canning line. And well, how does that make us more efficient? But what happened prior to having our own canning line is that we would have to hire someone to come from Southern Ontario to help us can our beer. So you can imagine that I used quite a bit of fossil fuels just to get that equipment up to us. And not only that, it was quite inconvenient. And so we managed to purchase our own canning line. And also you did an analysis that helped us determine that to switch from bottles to cans as part of our packaging, that cans were a more environmentally friendly packaging process. So we adopted that, and we've really followed through it and enlarged that, so much so that we only have one core product that is still bottled, and the rest of it is canned. And we even do some of our specialty brews through canning because we believe that it is a better process for the environment. And of course, aluminum can be recycled a lot. So it is a very recyclable product. And not having to bring someone up from Southern Ontario saves on transportation, so that's good. We're also exploring more energy efficient ways of adapting our brewing processes. So we've had various, a couple of consultants come through and help us with that. So we're starting to implement some of those processes. So it is a one step at a time, as I had said before. I think my advice would be probably consistent with everybody else's, and that would be make friends, whether it's, Green Economy North or it's funders, and scanning the environment constantly for grants and funding that will help us be better business, a more socially friendly, ethical business. We're open to ideas for sure.
Barb, I think you hit on a lot of great things there. Because I want to circle back a bit. Firstly, thank you. We do a great job. And I'll circle back a bit to the part, talk about that local farmer piece, because you hit on the fact that you can't do this alone. It's great to have partners. So suddenly, looking from a circular economy perspective, you're sharing your product with the farmers, and then you talk about that funding, and more we see funding. And this has not been a new trend. This is a trend for the past decade, 15 years, that funding really looks at partnerships. Who are you partnering with? Who are you doing this? Is it scalable? Can you repeat this? So it sounds to me like you've really kind of hit the nail on the head, talking like your own community about sharing your waste product with farmers. How did that come about, if I can ask?
Gee, I probably wasn't there for the original process. So I would have to say Andrea Smith would know more about that. But, we were buying products also from the local farmer, to sell his sausages and things. He actually incorporates some of our beer into some of his sausage making. So, there is a lot of friendliness there in any case. And so I think probably it just naturally flowed from that.
Well, I hope you started with a sign that said beer for cows, and then see where that led you.
It would bring a lot of people, thanks.
Speaking of wines and beers and celebrations, Judy, what do you think of this one in regards to, you talked a bit about this, you kind of led us into this transition. What advice would you have to other businesses, especially from your point of view, because a lot of churches are these historical buildings, and by keeping them sustainable, what we're really doing as well is we're not just keeping that community alive, but we're keeping these historical buildings active, which is also a beautiful thing historically here in Northern Ontario. So any advice in regards to that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, I'd like to say, first of all, Barb, I like your beer. I'm not a great drinker, but it's good beer. Yeah. I would advocate businesses and organizations to get connected with Rethink Green for information and encouragement. I know at my church, it's not just Judy saying we should do this. I have people behind me that have come in and inspected the place and said, yes, that would be a good idea. And it'll probably save you some money. And anyway, it really, really helps. So what we've done at my church is, as I said, rebuilt some old windows. We had an insulated metal roof installed, and that really made a difference because when they built churches back in 1957, they didn't use insulation. People just wore their coats to worship. So that doesn't happen anymore. But the insulated metal roof made a big difference. And we've put up signage for folks to turn out lights and turn down the heat. And we've done some caulking and sealing around replaced light bulbs. We get the kids involved too. We take them picking litter, and they celebrated our roof by writing a song about it and sang it for us. Kids really understand that this is important. And I mean, it's their earth that we're trying to save here. So that's church. At home, I've done some things. I've had insulation blown into the attic and replaced old windows. And I also planted deciduous trees on two sides of my house, the east and the west. The leaves insulate from the summer heat. And in winter, they're gone, leaving the windows free to soak up heat from sunshine.
I'll tell you, Judy, this is why I love these discussions, because one thing I've learned while doing this position is the amazing simple solutions people find to these issues. Talking about that metal roof, we never saw that 50 years ago, but even something as more as planting the right trees in the correct area of your house to help deal with that heat insulation piece naturally. Like, what an amazing solution that is. That is incredible. I'm really glad you brought that up. That's something really, really good today. That's up there with don't boil the ocean. All right, well, let's go on to our next question here today. Question 3. Oh, this is a good one. Kati, I'll send this back to you here, keeping in order. What dream green projects would you dive into or suggest to a business if you had the opportunity? And before I let you answer here, I think this really speaks a lot to the infrastructure we need in the north, because we've been hearing this discussion that, making the difference means we need some of this stuff in the north. We need more of this infrastructure, talking about the canning machine, talking about opportunities. So, being green leaders, we can start this stuff. So Kati, I'll pass it over to you.
Oh, this is a tough one. I actually, maybe it's not that tough. To be honest, my passion has always been in some form of environmental literacy. So that Dream Green project, I don't think it's for me necessarily something super tangible. But for me, my Dream Green projects, I believe I'm living it now, like we're doing it, having these conversations, the fact that we are educating ourselves, learning from Judy and Barb. I think so passion right now, maybe I'll pull on that, is we've been having a lot of conversations. Our work has always been based in heavy industry, so largely extractive mining, but also oil and gas and petrochem. And I think people often consider me a hypocrite for being an environmentalist working with and in those industries. And so my dream job right now is discussing that environmental literacy, kind of the paths to decarbonization. I've done a few podcasts on this, that we need these industries desperately for decarbonization, but they can't be doing their work in the same way they used to. It's a negative effect. So my dream job right now is a conversation about mining or petrochem having net positive environmental impacts, because we need those minerals for, Simon, I caught the tail end of his talk talking about lithium and critical minerals. And so it's a macro project. I know not necessarily relevant to smaller businesses in our community, but in the way that we wouldn't be having these chats virtually. We don't have wind turbines, we don't have batteries without those industries. So my dream project is working with those industries to provide tech, to have conversations with local community, to support them operating in their backyard, and change the conversation about these extractive industries having net positive impacts if we enable them to operate in the most sustainable way they can. So that's it. Wow, this is one topic I love to chat about now, but I think I'm living my dream project right now.
That's wonderful. And I'll be honest with you, I get that question a lot, because we do work with Vale and Glencore and a lot of mining, industry. And the question is, what's your thoughts on that? And I know when I get asked that question, and I like to hear your thoughts on this, that sustainability is a spectrum and you have to walk down that path. So, it's not like a switch. You can't just suddenly turn everything off. You have to slowly make progress. And how do you deal with that opposition all the time? How do you keep yourself motivated?
You get seen like a hypocrite, to be honest. I feel that a lot when people say there's no way you work in environment and you support these industries, and I 100% do. And that is because I genuinely believe they're critical to the path to decarbonization. But the irony is that those industries are more susceptible than many industries to climate change. So they don't get to produce with ice roads thawing, drought, conflict with water access. And so if we don't support local mining, local extraction of oil and gas or petrochem or other things to support these green infrastructure, green projects, green technology, people will source them from poorer socioeconomic places, less regulated places in the world, more conflict. So we have to find that environmental literacy, that conversation here, the R&D that they need, the ecosystem, the partnerships on a macro scale to get that. It's not a luxury anymore to talk about like zero waste extraction or zero waste mining. Like that has to happen now because we need it. We need it local, and we need it to move away from fossil fuels. We need it to move away from that. So that's where I get into the conversation with folks about that.
We could have a whole hour-long
panel
just on that.
Yeah.
So sign into our next regional business forum. Your thoughts on mining.
Thanks. I'll mute myself now.
Led by Kati. All right, head things over to Barb. Barb, what is your different, your industry, different tourism, production of beer, we've discovered, but everything from tourism to building infrastructure. What is your green dream project, if you could?
Well, I have a couple in mind, but they are dreams right now, so also keep that in mind. We do deliveries. What I would love to see in the future is an EV delivery truck. Obviously, to me, that's something that's just of great interest to me. I follow a lot of the literature and the developments on electric vehicles, so I find that an exciting possibility, and it would be a clear improvement. The transportation sector needs a lot of improvement. The other thing is we're always looking for food providers, and we haven't had a lot of luck getting consistency, but we've been fortunate to partner again with a local bakery in Corp, and we've had some food provided through them. We'd like to expand that. So the more local we can be about getting that provision, the better. Some of the things that have to happen for that are more green projects, and that is altering some of the infrastructure of the warehouse that we are currently renting. And so my dream green project would be to have these kinds of conversations with our property manager and start seeing, well, what is our landlord open to doing in terms of what would benefit them in terms of the value of the property, how much more energy efficient we could become, and also to enhance the facility at the same time. So this is something that we're looking forward to pursuing.
Barb, I'm going to go back to your first point on a green vehicle, an electric vehicle, or maybe even a hybrid. This is a really great point, and I bet you I'm going to ask you what I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to know the answer. What's your response? What response do you get when you tell people you would love a green fleet of electric vehicles? What do people always say back to you?
So expensive. That's probably the number one thing. I personally have been driving a hybrid vehicle myself since 2007. Wow. I loved it. I loved it. I knew I was saving gas. So the one thing I have in my favor is that I've lived some of this experience, and I can say, hey man, I saved money doing this. So, and if, I hope my personal next vehicle would be an EV too, but my current vehicle is good enough. I'll hang on to it for a while, but I really have believed in these products and the development of these products. So I'm a real believer. I think I can handle it.
That's it. Yeah, cost prohibitive is always the answer that I hear as well. It's too expensive. It's too cost prohibitive. And the second answer I hear is always, there's no chargers. How am I going to get around? I can't rely on that in the north. Both of which are just common myths. Yes, you don't have to go out and buy a Tesla. That'd be great. But there are many affordable green vehicles within the price range of new vehicles as well. So I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about that. And it is accessibly for charging here in Northern Ontario. So the more businesses who say that, the more producers will hear that message. So it's just great to hear that.
And just one other point about that, I guess GM just announced it was going to put 4,000 EV chargers, around in Canada. So, I mean, something's going to happen, in that direction, I'm hoping.
Yeah, you don't put an investment like that unless you have further projections that you're going to invest in that heavily. So that's a good sign.
It's a good sign.
Heading over to Judy, what Green Dreams project would you have? You already got your windows done, so congrats. Or you're getting your windows done with the solar. What's your next Green Dream project from that perspective?
Well, our roof in Trinity United Church in Capriol is very visible, and I'm hoping that other people will see it and say, hey, what did you do this for? What benefit is it? What did it cost? All this stuff. And maybe other people will copy. I know our installer, Steve, is also hoping that will happen, and it easily could. I'm hoping we may even get some on our own house, because one of our sources of heat here is electric. As Barb said about vehicles, I would like to see more hybrid vehicles, also electric vehicles and plug-ins. And as she said, I find it's always about the money. And this is true not only for individuals and businesses, but also for nations and governments. Anyway, I think you have to think beyond the money.
Well, I mean, this is where we see definitely that partnerships, that community connections, that community growth, sharing the load, as it were. And we see that with funding applications, and we see that with opportunities for sponsors. People are looking for community group projects, and sharing with that community is a good point. And I think if we saw, EV chargers in Capriol, we'd see more people purchasing EV vehicles in the surrounding area, or even in Greater Sudbury. Now, we do have a lot of chargers in Greater Sudbury, and there's more on the way, but it's sort of it's the chicken and the egg discussion, right? And we're looking forward, and there's no right answer, but there's definitely just going forward, right? All right, we are at 11:10. We still have 2 questions left. So we're going to keep rolling through. Once again, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If we have time, we'll get to them at the end, but we'll definitely send them to our presenters, who will hopefully share a little extra time and email us back their responses. So Kati, tossing things back with you. In your opinion, who within a business organization should play a role in defining, engaging, and implementing sustainability strategies and action plans?
Well, just everyone.
Everyone. That's a good answer. I love that answer. Everybody.
So previously at the mining company I worked, I was in environment, and we used to see these spills, and people, I'm gonna harm the company by spilling all of this gas and wasting their money. And I'd shake my head, and I'd have to report the spill to the government. And I'd think, like, your kids play in that lake and drink this water and breathe this air. Like, this isn't their environment and your environment. And another example, at the university, a lot of students had a hard time diverting waste, and I don't know, I don't understand. And like, well, it's not their campus and your campus, it's our campus. And same at work here, it's not someone's problem, it's everyone's problem. And so the answer to this one is, for me, incredibly simple. It's everyone. It's everyone's role. It's everyone's job. And that's, previously, the piece of advice I gave in the previous question is find champions. So these champions, some people are more passionate about energy management or transportation sharing or different, so whatever you're into, lean into that area and just start making changes. And it's everyone. And we had really cool taglines, I think, in multiple places that I've had the privilege to work. One of them was, find your friends with eco benefits. Not just friends with benefits, friends with eco.
I like that. Kind of like that. You with the taglines today.
Yeah.
I love it.
Find your friends with eco benefits. And part of that was, it occurred to me as I started to mature in my career, we were so quick to criticize each other for the political or religious or what, you're so quick to judge. And then we don't often on really poor or shitty environmental behaviors. We don't really talk to our neighbor about the fact that they're putting out more garbage than they need to, or, Barbara helping share her knowledge about EV, or Judy with other churches talking about, their behaviors. So I think we also have to challenge ourselves to criticize poor environmental behavior and talk about it like we talk about politics or other things where we're so fast. So we can also convert people to be eco-friends or friends with eco benefits very quickly if we can help them. And, my parents, my grandparents, people that before, well, we don't do it. I don't see the point of it. And, to the earlier question, it's about environmental literacy. There has to be a way for them to understand what that impact is. So everything green is a critical player in that right now in our community.
I love this concept of, you're right. We're so easy to point fingers on everything else. So, and how come we're not, engaging in these discussions? And there are groups in the community that are also doing it as well. But there definitely needs to be more, for sure. I think I was once told by a teacher that English teachers teach English, but it's all the teacher's responsibility to make sure the students read. And the same thing for environmentalism. Absolutely. Your environmental captain, lead, green team lead, whatever position you have in your business is leads the charge, but it's everyone's responsibility to make sure they recycle or follow the rules. So I really love that response. That's really, really good. Do you find it difficult when you're talking with businesses for them to carry that mentality? Like, what's that feedback you get when you're like, well, your whole business should be on board with this, not just one guy?
Well, I think, my previous role at the university was different. I was working with students, and I think as Judy or Barb was saying, getting into the kids, and they're so much easier to adapt. They understand it. They're so much faster. Right now, the role I have, we're working with global mining executives, and they're, changing their view is not like changing a student's view. However, I'm incredibly inspired lately with the language they're using. It's not a checkbox anymore on projects to consider environmental permitting or impacts or engaging with Indigenous communities. That's like the first part of a project now. So I'm wildly motivated by that. The fact that this is the language now that executives are using. The translation of it to operations obviously is, to the earlier chat, it's about money, and that's where my role is, in a consultant to help. So yeah, I'm very motivated by that, and it's been fun in my career. I'm grateful to have seen that, being able to work with students and now with CEOs globally. And I don't think it's really much more complicated when you translate it to the fact that we all breathe the same air. So it's not your mine site or your campus, it's our everything.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's all our air. Absolutely. That's correct. I like that. Barb, I've met a lot of your staff and employees. Everyone there is so motivated environmentally. Who's the big leader in your office, and who should be the leader in a business for environmental sustainability?
Interesting. Well, actually, I think, it's a team effort, it really is teamwork, because, who defines what the problems are? Actually, the staff who are doing the work, and producing the beer and serving the beer, where the wastage is. If we are doing a process that is ineffective or inefficient or wasting a lot of material, they can identify that. So they play, I think, a very strong role in defining sustainability strategies or where the problems lie. And I think as Kati was saying, the younger they are, the more tuned in they seem to be to those kinds of energy issues or wastage issues or something that's connected to the environment. So it really helps too to have a cohort of students that come in the summer, because they're already on board with everything like that. And they may see things that even the rest of us don't see, because, work is every day for us, kind of thing. So I think within the staff level, that I think it's their job to point it out. It's our job in management, since I'm not serving the beer most of the time, it's our job to listen to what they have to say and say, hey, we need a strategy for that. We got to deal with it. so it's that kind of dialogue that has to be happening day in, day out, and an openness to it, and understanding that, you know, when you say as a staff member that there's wastage happening, there's someone up there listening, and taking that seriously. And then, you know, we have a discussion like how are we going to address this, you know? So it's a dynamic, I think, within the organization that everyone plays a role in. So I think that's how I would see it.
That's actually, firstly, props to you for, you know, I'm sure at the end of a long day, your staff comes to you and says, hey, we're wasting all this. You know, sometimes you're tired, sometimes you're like, all right, whatever. You know, it's easy just to be like, you know what, it's Friday, man, relax. But the fact that you're engaging in those discussions from the front line, and we don't hear a lot of that discussion a lot, that is the frontline workers that are noticing it first. Have you put any systems in place to have those discussions regularly, or are you sort of a small team that can always have that discussion every day?
Yeah, I mean, we have at least monthly meetings with our sales team and our production team. So any of this can come up during those meetings. But I mean, we're such a small organization, it's just conversation. You know, I'm just hanging around, of course, during the day and checking in with everybody, and it can come up anytime.
That's really good. I love that frontline piece. Going over to Judy, you know, the church organization is a bit different. I know it's a lot of volunteer work, which is incredible. You know, who should be that person who has that role? Whose responsibility is it? Whose responsibility should it be? And how do you get that feedback in your organization, Judy?
Well, I agree with Kati. The answer to that is everyone and anyone. And what you do is you start with conversations to hopefully get others involved, get others interested. And short answer.
Well, Judy, if I can dive a bit more into the volunteer perspective, because I know a lot of things are happening through volunteer committees there. Are you finding opposition in your communities, or do you find some volunteers aren't finding this important? And if they aren't, how do you sort of talk them into it?
Well, I found that the main thing was the money, and we were able to get our solar panels because our big church, the United Church, also believes in looking after Mother Earth, and we were able to get some heavy-duty funding from the United Church, and that made a very big difference. In churches, it's all about money because all the money to run the church comes from the people, right? And they say, well, we don't have enough money. So it's nice to belong to a denomination that will support green perspectives.
That's actually great to hear. And I'm sure they also see from the other side, the cost savings perspective, when they see that sustainability choice afterwards, that return on investment. Do you guys ever talk about that as much?
Well, we will notice more and more, I'm sure, as the price of energy goes up. They'll be thankful.
Well, this really goes back to that thing that we said earlier, right? You can't reduce what you can't measure and track everything, right, Judy? Exactly.
It's wonderful having the measurements that you guys help us with.
I wasn't setting you up for that, but I'll take it.
No, it's something that's made a big difference.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. All right, we're coming on to our last question. And once again, the audience, if you guys have any questions, throw them up in chat, and if we have time, we'll get to them. Kati, you know, this is the big one. What else our planet? We really hit for the stars on this one. What else will you do to help restore our planet in 2021? No pressure, but it's on your shoulders.
Well, I'll just go back and follow my own advice, right? We can't boil the ocean. And so we have two big priorities. We moved offices through the pandemic. We're in this new space now. And when we moved in, I didn't realize we have no recycling, which is, to me, just so ridiculous. I have a lot of swear words to throw at that, but unbelievable.
That's the after session.
Unbelievable to me that in this community, this whole office. So, you know, we're unboxing things and all these boxes. I was on, like, anyways, I don't need to go into it. You know how I feel, I just said it, but that's a huge priority right now. And I couldn't believe how fast two of the engineers in our office volunteered their trucks to drive all the recycling. So they asked everyone, don't put it in bags, don't throw it, we'll divert it. And I didn't even open my mouth. They did it on their own. And so what I want to do is empower the staff here to keep going with that and find a way to kind of almost embarrass this landlord about this and just say, like, we're taking it into our own hands as a short term, but what are you doing? How are you being held accountable? Taking pictures of these truckloads. So it's a huge priority for me. It's nothing to do right now with our clients. It's just, it's amazing to me that people will mobilize, and it just motivates me to want to do more. And how do I give them a bigger platform to do more? So the second thing I would say is we have a technology that we've been operating in Sudbury, and I think as president of a company, I don't do it justice if I don't talk about it. So we've been operating the sulfur dioxide monitoring in Sudbury for 17 years. That product has just been there, helping the mining industries, helping communities, helping with environmental literacy. So my big challenge in the next little while and into 2022 is doing a bit of research and development and making this product for all environmental real-time monitoring. We only do sulfur right now. We can do water, we can do other things. And so my goal is to help put this in the hands of other industries, and it could be local urban air, could be other industries that need water or air quality monitoring. This is a product that's just made here in Sudbury, and I can't believe we don't talk about it in bigger picture and across Canada. So to me, it's an incredibly proactive tool that industries could be using to prevent harm rather than just track and report after. So those are two big goals I have right now for restoring our planet in 2021.
Yeah, it's on you. It's on you, Kati.
Yeah, I feel it. Yeah, just swallow a few times to answer that question.
That product you mentioned is incredible. And to think that it was developed here in Northern Ontario, I think sometimes we forget the vast knowledge base we have here in the North for these types of products. And I bet you that's one of many that we're unaware of. And the more we talk about it, the more we realize. So just to give people a little background, like how would they contact if they're interested in that?
Yeah, just on our website, people could find my email, I think is with you, or we could go through Rethink Green. I think Green Economy North and Rethink Green, that's an incredible powerhouse of liaison, right, between our community, small business, heavy industry, researchers, developers, tech producers, speakers, policymakers. So that's they'll put it back to you to put on your shoulders to bear that.
Now I have to save the planet. Oh my God.
Yeah. But I would say
passing the buck here.
We have to do a bit of cross-pollinization. We have to do that better. And I talked about extractive industries. They need mass collaboration and rapid innovation, and that's it doesn't have to be much different from our own personal house or the church or a brewery. And I do have Loon Song Stout waiting for me. It's my favorite. But I think that's what we have to challenge each other with is finding some cross pollinization of some of this tech or behavior changes or what's working, and challenging each other. So that is a powerhouse that Green Economy North has for us in our area.
Thank you so much. And the other point you brought up, and I think shocks the most people, and just before I head over to Barb, is you talked about how you asked two people, hey, we have this recycling, who can help? And to the engineers offer their trucks. The problem was always there. You just asked who was interested. And a lot of people don't ask. And asking people to help is incredibly powerful, more powerful than anyone could ever imagine, because people want to help, right? They want to be part of the solution. People like being part of something. So
to be honest, I didn't even ask. They asked, where are the recycle bins? And we said, we're working on it. And they said, that's too long to wait. And they just started. It was like, it blew me out of, I'm never more motivated than things like that. It's incredible to me.
Absolutely. Heading over to Barb. Barb, good news. You got to save the planet. What are you going to do?
Well, we're chipping away at B Corp certification. So B Corp certification is kind of getting an official stamp of approval by the business meeting various behavioral criteria in the areas of environment, social, and governance. So we started that process earlier this year. We're still in the process, but we're sort of looking at every item so that we can actually graduate into a B Corp certification. So that would include, they have criteria like giving your staff a living wage, which I believe we do, but they, we also we are reviewing the wages, governance, and encouraging diversity within the staff. So trying to approach social issues as well as environmental issues and increasing our energy efficiency and all the things we've talked about so far. So that's something that's an ongoing process and that we plan to continue, and we plan to meet the goal probably not until 2022, but that is something in our sights. The other thing is it's been a really tough year. So when we talk about sustainability in a corporation, I think some of that has to be retaining your staff and treating them well. So I think I'm hoping we'll just have some fun at the end of this year, because with COVID and all the anxiety that was generated for, more than the first half of the year, and having our staff stick with us through that and never knowing what was going to happen, I think, we need to have some fun at the end of the year. And so we're going to try and figure that one out, because things have loosened up and seem to be going in a positive direction, but wow, it's been a heck of a year. So, we just need to feel happy for a little bit.
It isn't all doom and gloom, right, Barb? Sometimes
It
the
shouldn't be,
environment
or
isn't all things are going to end. Sometimes it's look at what we did. That's a really great point. And this ties back really much to what we said earlier about that overwhelming nature. So everyone, Barb's throwing a party at the end of 2022 after we save the planet. Go look her up. And we're gonna end things off over with Judy. We're coming to the end of the session. Judy, balls in your court. How you saving the planet in 2021?
Well, there's some things I can do at home that I couldn't do in my church or workplace, but they do make a difference. For instance, I'm very conscious that water is a precious resource, and I regularly recycle water. I take bath water by siphon to the washer cycle of my top-loading clothes washer, and I save the effluent from my reverse osmosis system for the rinse cycle. I can extend that siphon in summer to take the bath water outside for watering when my rain barrels are empty. And I also use bath water for toilet flushing, and this saves heat as well as water. Not only do you get the heat from the hot bath water as it cools, but every time I do a regular flush in winter, I send room temperature water down the drain and bring in freezing cold water from outside, which then soaks up heat from the room. And since water is about 1,000 times as dense as air, a tiny difference in water temperature makes a huge difference in air temperature. And I will continue to pick up litter with or without the kids, talk to folks about greening, and show off my new scarf with a label that says, "I was a bottle."
I love that you both recycle your water and are all about winter fashion. I think this is a perfect combo. Judy, I got to tell you, that is the greatest way to cap off this session. Everyone, if you want to learn how to do it in your home, I'm putting Judy on the spot. You reach out to her at Trinity United Church, or talk to us. We'll connect you, because that's what this is all about: connecting the ideas that we have in the community for things that I didn't think of. Hopefully, none of you new ideas are brought to you. And this was just one of the most amazing panels I got to do. So thank you so very much. I want to thank Barb, Kati, and Judy for sharing that time with us today. Everyone's mics are off, but I'm going to give you a round of applause anyway, guys. Thank you so much for that. I'm seeing the reactions of the people in the room with me about all your great answers. So I'm getting some feedback at least, and everyone's loved this. So thank you so very much, everyone. So we appreciate it.
Thanks. Our pleasure.